Lovely viewers, today is a truly beautiful day to unravel the darkest and most tangled webs of Port Charles. Did Jason honestly think he could just strike Willow down, leave her unconscious in the shadows, and walk away without anyone connecting the dots? If you ask me, this entire situation is a ticking time bomb, and I am here to break down every single layer of this absolute mess. We are looking at a dangerous stalemate right now, a terrifying deadlock where one wrong move could send multiple people to prison. The PCPD is swarming, the evidence is mounting, and everyone is pointing fingers. Willow is lying there in a hospital bed after a brutal attack, and all the initial clues are conveniently pointing straight at Drew. But guys, you and I both know that in this town, the most obvious answer is almost never the real truth. This is a classic misdirection, a deeply calculated move designed to keep the authorities chasing their own tails while the real culprit hides in plain sight. It looks like we are dealing with a deeply psychological motive here, one rooted in twisted loyalty, ultimate sacrifice, and a desperate need to protect family at all costs, regardless of the legal or moral consequences. Let us look closely at the facts surrounding the attack on Willow. Yes, Drew was publicly furious with her. He had every right to be angry, and he made absolutely sure that everyone in town heard his threats. Because of that public outrage, the police immediately labeled him as their prime suspect. It is the easiest narrative for them to digest. But could it be that Drew only ever intended to have a fierce verbal confrontation? If you ask me, Drew is not the kind of man who would resort to physical violence against a woman in a dark alley, no matter how much she threatened his future or his freedom. He wanted to look her in the eye and tear her down with his words, to make her feel the weight of her own actions, not to silence her with his fists. This implies that someone else stepped in, someone who operates entirely in the shadows and has zero hesitation when it comes to crossing the line to neutralize a threat. Enter Jason. We all know exactly how he operates. He is the ultimate protector, the man who will do whatever it takes, break whatever laws are necessary to keep his loved ones safe from harm. It looks like Jason was secretly tracking Willow's every single move that night. Why? Because he discovered that she was about to destroy a crucial piece of evidence, or perhaps she was preparing to hand over something so damning that it would completely ruin Drew forever. Jason understood the stakes perfectly. He knew that if Willow was allowed to make that phone call, or if she managed to hand over that file, Drew would lose absolutely everything he had worked so hard to rebuild. This was not a random act of violence. This was a highly calculated move to stop a disaster before it could detonate. Jason's psychological motive was clear. He had to protect his brother, and he had to do it in a way that kept Drew entirely out of the crosshairs. Jason knew he had to act fast, with absolute precision. He could not let Willow succeed in her plan, but he also did not want to kill her. He is an enforcer, yes, but he is not a monster who kills without reason. So, he emerged from the darkness just as she was about to finalize her move, striking her from behind with a single, precise blow to render her completely unconscious. It was a surgical strike, meant only to stop her in her tracks and secure the evidence. By doing this himself, Jason ensured that Drew kept his hands clean. He wanted to spare his brother the psychological trauma of committing violence and the legal nightmare of an assault charge. It looks like Jason willingly took the heavy burden of this crime onto his own shoulders so Drew would not have to live with the guilt. But in doing so, he has created an unforeseen fallout that might just destroy their entire family dynamic. When Willow finally regains consciousness in the hospital, she is disoriented, terrified, and in pain. All she can remember is a dark figure looming over her right before everything went black. Naturally, because Drew was the only one who had been publicly threatening her, her mind immediately jumps to the worst possible conclusion. She points the finger directly at Drew. The shattered trust between them makes it so incredibly easy for her to believe that he is capable of this brutality. She is absolutely convinced that Drew is the monster who attacked her in the dark, giving the PCPD the perfect, neat little narrative they need to lock him up. If you ask me, Willow's absolute certainty is going to make it very difficult for anyone to prove otherwise, because she genuinely believes her own accusation. But the police investigation is about to hit a massive, unavoidable brick wall. The security cameras in the immediate area mysteriously missed a few crucial minutes of footage right when the attack happened. How convenient, right? Guys, this implies that someone with serious tactical skills tampered with the system. further proving that this was a highly calculated move by a professional, not a crime of passion by an angry Drew. However, no crime is ever truly perfect. Anna is on the case, and she is far too smart, far too experienced to be fooled by a missing video feed. She meticulously combs the crime scene, looking for the tiny details that others miss. And what does she find? She discovers footprints in the dirt that absolutely do not match the size or style of Drew's shoes. This tiny physical detail is the loose thread that could unravel Jason's entire cover-up. Meanwhile, Carly is starting to notice that Jason is acting incredibly strange. You guys know Carly? She can read Jason like an open book. She sees the rigid tension in his shoulders. She hears the evasive answers he gives to simple questions, and she recognizes that dark, burdened look in his eyes. She pushes him, refusing to let it go, relentlessly questioning his whereabouts on the night Willow was attacked. Finally, the truth spills out. Jason confesses to Carly that he was the one who struck Willow down. He explains his deeply psychological motive. He did it to stop Willow from destroying Drew, and he did it to keep Drew from ruining his own life with a violent mistake. Carly is left reeling, pacing the room, holding on to a toxic secret that could send her best friend to a federal prison if it ever gets out. Now, we are standing at a massive fork in the road, and the upcoming episodes are going to be an absolutely wild ride for the fans. Once Drew inevitably discovers the truth about what Jason did, and we all know secrets never stay hidden in this town, he is going to face an impossible, soul-crushing choice. Let us break this down into two very distinct, very dangerous scenarios for how this nightmare will ultimately unfold. In scenario A, Drew decides that his moral compass simply cannot handle the weight of this deception. Could it be that Drew decides he must protect the law, even if it means sacrificing his own brother? If you ask me, this would be viewed as the ultimate betrayal in Jason's eyes, even if Drew believes he is doing the right, ethical thing. Drew might argue that he never asked for Jason's violent protection, that he never wanted anyone hurt, let alone Willow. This scenario would lead to a total, irreparable fracture between the brothers. Drew would march down to the PCPD, clear his own name, and hand Jason over to Anna on a silver platter. The unforeseen fallout here would be absolutely catastrophic. Carly would never, ever forgive Drew for turning Jason in, and the entire family dynamic would be completely shattered. It looks like this path would leave Drew entirely isolated, clinging desperately to his morality, but losing his entire support system in the process. But then we have scenario B, which, if you ask me, is far more likely given the twisted, complicated loyalty that runs through the veins of everyone in this town. In scenario B, Drew realizes the massive, life-altering sacrifice Jason made just for him. He recognizes that Jason risked his own freedom, his own future, just to keep Drew's hands clean and his life intact. Could it be that Drew decides to swallow his pride, bury his strict morals, and actively cover for Jason? This implies that Drew would have to actively lie to the PCPD, deliberately mislead Anna's investigation, and perhaps even manipulate Willow into doubting her own memory of the attack. They would become permanently bound together by this dark, toxic secret. However, covering up a crime of this magnitude requires a heavy psychological toll. Drew would have to watch Willow suffer, knowing the absolute truth, while pretending to be the victim of a false accusation. The shattered trust would not just be between Drew and Willow, but potentially between Drew and his own conscience as he lives a lie every single day. So, where does this leave our characters in this terrifying deadlock? If you ask me, neither of these scenarios offers a clean getaway or a happy ending. You simply cannot strike a woman down in the streets of this town and expect the secrets to stay buried forever. Anna's already highly suspicious of those unmatched footprints, and Carly is a walking liability when she is stressed and trying to protect Jason. I highly doubt Drew will be able to handle the intense pressure of the PCPD breathing down his neck without eventually cracking under the weight of the guilt. We are looking at a volatile situation where blind loyalty might just be the very thing that destroys them all. I suspect that Jason's calculated move is going to backfire in the most spectacular and devastating way possible, leaving everyone scrambling for their own survival. But of course, we will just have to wait and see how this brilliant, twisted mess unfolds on our screens